Everybody's ready.
Everybody's ready.
So, very brief introduction. This is a Bodhi Mind Center gathering with Venerable Tenzin Dasel from India, born in America, raised and went to college in Maine, graduated from a couple of schools in Maine, undergrad and grad, has been a monastic in India for now 4 years, is it, Dasala?
Well, 4 years with His Holiness and 1 year prior, so almost 5 years actually.
Almost 5 years. She has visited us in Colorado twice to give teachings, 2018, 2019, and this time she's doing it electronically from India in the nunnery where she lives and teaching on the 8 verses of mind training, or 8 verses for training the mind, depending on how you want to translate it. And last week was our first one. This is the second. And then after this week, we'll have two more from 9:30 a.m. here. And everyone is welcome. And you're also welcome before, during, or after to go to our website and make a contribution for these teachings if you'd like at our PayPal button. So with that, I will hand it over to Venerable Tenzin Dasela. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to David Gardner and to Bodhi Mind Center and to all our beautiful friends there and some people tuning in from India and from Carla, Maine Connection, who's now in Indiana. And just lovely to be together like this, even though still I'm old school enough to prefer to be in the room with all of you beautiful beings, but this is about as close as we can get right now. And it's wonderful to be on a whole nother continent across the world and be able to share dharma together in this way. So thank you. And it's my great pleasure to be here with you today for a few hours. So I want to invite us to begin by just taking a few deep breaths, settling comfortably into your chair. And we're going to start with just about, maybe 5 or 10 minutes of meditation to just allow ourselves to come into our center and think about what it means to be able to practice Dharma, to have met with the Dharma, to have a beautiful group of people to practice with. These 8 verses of mind training, or they're also called 8 verses of thought transformation. And the idea of bodhichitta, of generating the altruistic mind, the mind that cherishes others, we could say more than oneself, but definitely equal to oneself. I think in the West these days, a lot of the teachers' feelings is that it's important to encourage everyone to cherish themselves and to cherish others equally. So it may feel daunting to cherish others more than oneself. That's more of an Eastern culture here in Asia, but let's just think about equanimity, that self and others are exactly alike and wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, and wanting loving kindness and benefiting from that, and compassion. And let's just begin by giving ourselves 5 minutes of loving kindness and compassion in a calm mind. I'll set a timer here. Whatever you like to do for your practice, breathing in, breathing out, little shamatha, calm abiding. So just finding breath and really being able to enjoy the connection of stillness and opening the body to relaxation and present moment awareness. And we might have thoughts coming and going, and that's okay. Just letting them come and go, not believing or chasing them. Just being spacious, letting the mind be like the sky and whatever's moving through it, just allowing. Doing a little meditation on the in-breath, breathing in with the thought, may I feel loving kindness. And on the out-breath, may all beings feel loving kindness. So let's come out of the meditation now and see how wonderful it can be just to take a few minutes whenever we need to bring ourselves back to the present moment. That was 5 minutes, but you can just take 1 minute or 2 minutes, always good in between activities, or if you get some kind of news that's you need time to digest, just take a little meditation. Nothing that will ever do you anything better than just taking some conscious breaths. So now I'd like to open with our refuge and bodhichitta prayer, because we're practicing in this formal way, these 8 verses of mind training. When we practice the Buddha Dharma, it's really beneficial if we set an intention, a motivation, and a dedication. And so when we take refuge and cultivate bodhicitta, the bodhicitta means cultivating this mind, this altruistic mind that wishes to attain Buddhahood and enlightenment, to be able to only help others and never harm, to only be of ultimate benefit. And refuge, of course, you all know what that means. It means seeking safety or shelter or protection. If we're in a big storm, outside somewhere with lightning, we know what it means. We want to get out of the storm and seek refuge, which means safety and shelter and protection. And so when we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, we are seeking safety and we're seeking protection from what are called the three poisons, the three things that create suffering, the realm of samsara, these three aspects of the mind. The first being ignorance, which does not lead us into happiness, it leads us actually more into suffering, because we tend to create desires that are selfish, that are greedy, that are grasping at the physical material world or at that pleasurable emotions, or at getting gain, or we create desires around wanting a good name and fame and praise. These are part of these 8 worldly concerns we talked about last week. And once we do that, the opposite from desire immediately will travel with it, which is hatred or aversion. It means we get very frustrated, we get very stressed out when instead of pleasure, we get pain. And when instead of gain, we lose something. And instead of hearing praise, someone blames us. And instead of having a good name, we have disrepute. Our name becomes, part of infamy. So we don't like that. And so these, the Buddha called the 3 poisons. And he said, these are the 3 things that create the wheel of suffering, the realm of suffering. Because if we're moving through this world in our life under these 3 influences of, first of all, ignorance, not knowing our true nature, then grasping at ideas, concepts, grasping at a reality of materialism, that these things are part of kind of a selfish desire, that will only then lead to aversion and hatred, so that once we can't have our desires satisfied, we create very difficult conditions. And these are the things we need refuge from. So the Buddha was talking about going to refuge to the 3 jewels, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So to the teacher, the teachings, and the community of practitioners. So this is why we always begin our practice by bringing this intentionality to mind. Once we have our intention, we know what it is we're doing, and we set our motivation. That's why are we doing it? Well, obviously because we want to get out of suffering. No one wants suffering. So we want to create causes and conditions that lead towards our highest happiness, which is completely free of suffering. And then who is going to benefit from this? This is why we dedicate. Well, just doing the practice, we're transforming our mind by doing the practice. So we ourselves will be the primary beneficiary from this. But we're not only practicing for ourselves, because the Buddha said, actually, the way we appear, we're not a self individual being. We're intimately connected in unity with all of things that live. So we're doing this for the benefit of all mother sentient beings. So we're giving that motivation of doing the practice away when we dedicate for the benefit of ourself and all sentient beings. So that's our intention, our motivation, and our dedication. And whenever we do even our own private practice at home, in the morning, or if we do a meditation practice during the day, it's always wonderful to give the merits away, to practice with the intention to benefit oneself through cultivating the qualities, through the motivation of knowing that these are only going to relate and create positive environment, and then the dedication that everyone's going to benefit, no matter who comes into our radius in our environment. Whether it's insects we're not going to harm, or animals we're not going to harm, other human beings, no matter how they're acting, everyone's going to benefit. This is the meaning of bodhichitta. So we will say, take our refuge together now, even if you are not technically a Buddhist. I don't know if everyone here has taken refuge, but it doesn't matter. You can still generate these positive states of mind. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, until enlightened, I seek refuge through merit from giving, and the rest, to aid all may I become Buddha. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, Until enlightened, I seek refuge. Through merit from giving and the rest, to aid all, may I become Buddha. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, until enlightened, I seek refuge. Through merit from giving and the rest, to aid all, may I become Buddha. And in Tibetan, that sounds like Sangye Chodan Soki Chognam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kyapsu Chi Drala Penchir Sangye Drupar Sho. So I think the refuge is pretty clear. I'll just explain one line that might be a little bit unclear for people. Through merit from giving and the rest. This means from giving and the rest are the 6 paramitas. So giving is the first perfection. Generosity is the first perfection. And the rest are the other 5 perfections. Pure ethics, patience, or forbearance, so that when difficult things come up, we're able to continue along with our practice and our commitment to only strive to attain enlightenment for the benefit of self and all other beings. After that comes joyful diligence. So patience and forbearance kind of work with making good effort. Then concentration. So that means meditation, but really high meditation to a point where you have single pointed concentration, which means you are able to keep your mind solely on that focus of maintaining perfect concentration. And then wisdom is the 6th perfection, the wisdom that recognizes the true nature of reality, which is called shunyata, which means emptiness. Emptiness doesn't mean that nothingness is there. It means empty of existing independently by oneself. So it's really about how things exist. This idea of causes and conditions that we talked about last week, of how things come together deeply, deeply interdependently to create all of our reality. So last week we talked about not even getting this body by ourselves. We didn't create this body. We got it from our kind parents. And through their genetic conditions of sperm and egg, we were able to get a physical being with DNA and lots of development. And then what is our responsibility is our own consciousness. Our mind stream then connects with the physicality of the body. And so when we practice, Buddhism is always about cultivating and developing higher and higher states of awareness, of consciousness, of mind. And that's also empty. Mind is also empty of any kind of independent existence. Mind is also arising through emptiness, through causes and conditions. So that's why we want to generate a mind, chitta, bodhichitta. Chitta is Sanskrit for mind. Bodhi means of awakened, enlightened mind. We want an awakened, enlightened mind that's full of only perfectly good qualities, of all these positive qualities of the 6 perfections. And to do that, we are putting intention into our practice. So it's good to understand when we're saying refuge and bodhicitta. I'm a believer in line by line, everything should be clear for people. So I hope that is more clear if it wasn't what merit, giving, and the rest means. That's what this means, is these 6 perfections. And it would be very beneficial. Sometime maybe we'll do another little discourse on these 6 perfections, because those are also wonderful to practice. And then the 4 immeasurables, and we talked a little bit last week about these as well. These 4 immeasurable qualities, and they're called that because they're immeasurable in the same way that all life and living beings are immeasurable. In the Heart Sutra, the Prajnaparamita that we taught on the last time I was visiting you in Colorado, this idea of developing the mind of awakening immeasurably, because when the Buddha was meditating in samadhi on the Heart Sutra, he was meditating on the countless aspects of phenomena, meaning phenomena are beginningless and endless. And likewise, so are beings. Any kind of living beings that we can imagine, we still can't imagine all of them. So whether it's from the insect world or the fish world or the bird world or the cat world or the human world or the dog world, anything that lives, even inanimate, not inanimate, but unseen beings may be there. I think, people often report that they feel that there's a sensation of something else in the room with them, even though they can't see them. And in Buddhism, we believe in that. We call that the formless realm, that there are life forms that we cannot necessarily see with our eyes because they don't have a material form, but they still have a consciousness. They just don't have a body that's there with it. So, in the West, we might call this ghosts or spirits. In Buddhism, it's just called the formless realm. There's one realm called the pretas, which are like hungry ghosts. So this kind of idea that life exists like this is found in many cultures. So we can't even see those beings. So how can we even imagine how many there are, what they look like, because we don't see them. But even for them, they're immeasurable. We want to offer these qualities. So these immeasurable qualities are for all the immeasurable forms of life. And they're also immeasurable because they can be developed without limit. So in Buddhism, you'll come to find there's always kind of a double entendre, double meaning, even more than two, but we'll just keep it to two for now. That there's many rich layers, many rich meanings that we can uncover as our practice grows and deepens. I remember sitting in Jolie Green's kitchen in Maine years and years ago with Rinpoche, maybe only 2 years into Buddhism, and just really trying to get my head around a little bit of emptiness and dependent arising, and just feeling so inspired by it, because a little bit of a kind of an appreciation was like, oh, well, emptiness is another way to say dependent arising. They kind of mean the same thing. And I was quite excited about that. And Rinpoche kind of perked up and he said, it's wonderful. You will keep going. There are many, many layers. And it has been that way. I mean, some of you have been in the Dharma a lot longer than I have. And now I can say in about 20 years of following and practicing the Dharma, yes, almost 5 years as a monastic, but before then, becoming more and more compelled by it, which is why I took robes, was that it was just all I wanted to really commit myself to. So you really find that these studies and these practices really will bring more and more benefit the more we understand them. And so it's good to say these prayers, but it's very essential that we try to understand why we're saying them and what the words really mean. So the Four Immeasurables: may all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be parted from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from bias, attachment, and hatred. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be parted from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from bias, attachment, and hatred. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be parted from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from bias, attachment, and hatred. So with these four immeasurables, they also are the qualities in Buddhism of how we talk about love. The first line of wishing happiness and its causes for all sentient beings is the definition of loving kindness in Buddhism. The second line, may all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes, is the definition of compassion in Buddhism. And the third line, may all sentient beings never be parted from sorrowless bliss, is the definition of empathetic joy. And then the final fourth line, may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from bias, is the definition of equanimity. So these are the four immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity. And these are the qualities that we're going to really keep in mind as we work with the 8 verses of mind training. Maybe, David, you want to put the 8 verses up? now. That would be helpful. And just to keep them in mind that we're going to be relating these four immeasurables with these 8 verses.
Just one moment.
Okay. Okay, and so we can say these also out loud because, for a long time, especially Tibetan Buddhism in the era of when Shakyamuni Buddha was alive and teaching, most people were not literate. So the teachings were always given orally. And I'm not sure about you all, but I know when I say something out loud or if I write it down, it tends to stay in my mind longer and more clearly. So this is also why if you go into our temple here at the nunnery or you go into any of the monastery temples, there's always a lot of chanting going on and a lot of repetition of the prayers, because these vibrations, the more we say them, the more they're bringing in higher states of consciousness. And as Rinpoche explained to me once, I try to say them a little bit in Tibetan for you, because he said, if you can say them in Tibetan, it's been said in Tibetan for such a much longer time than these sounds have been repeated in English, that the sounds themselves carry blessings. But of course, it's very important to understand what you're saying. So I think better in our case that we're saying them in English, because I don't know, maybe someone there out in the audience speaks Tibetan, but I'm not even speaking conversant Tibetan, let alone fluent Tibetan. I can say my prayers, some of my prayers in Tibetan, I know what they mean. But it's very important that the meaning comes into our heart through our own understanding of what the words are expressing. But when we think about how old this meaning is, we should really think about this is the way the Buddha was teaching these same teachings when he was alive, giving oral transmission. So now we'll say the 8 verses of mind training by Geshe Langri Tangpa, the Tibetan from the 11th century Geshe monk, who wrote these, as I said last week, he wrote them as a little bit of a guide for himself, to keep in mind what he found was essential in his practice of bodhichitta, cultivating the altruistic mind and spirit of enlightenment. But then he realized, well, if they're helpful for someone else, then I'll put them out there. And if others can benefit, then why not? So there's always this kind of sense of humility when you come across these beautiful kinds of teachings in the Tibetan tradition, which is the monk saying, or the nun, or the lama saying, these were inspirations I got from following the Buddhist teachings. I wrote them down to help myself, but if they can help you, I'm really happy about it. But showing humility, not trying to claim any kind of you should follow these teachings because I said that they're really good teachings. So there's always this kind of sense of humility, of everyone being in that equanimity and just helping each other out, walking along down the path together, going for the same aim. So that's quite lovely. So the 8 verses of mind training, the first verse, with a determination to achieve the highest aim for the benefit of all sentient beings, which surpasses even the wish-fulfilling gem, may I hold them dear at all times. Second verse, whenever I interact with someone, may I view myself as the lowest amongst all, and from the very depths of my heart, respectfully hold others as superior. Third verse, in all my deeds, may I probe into my mind, and as soon as mental and emotional afflictions arise, as they endanger myself and others, may I strongly confront and avert them. Fourth verse, when I see beings of unpleasant character oppressed by strong negativity and suffering, may I hold them dear, for they are rare to find, as if I've discovered a jeweled treasure. Fifth verse, when others out of jealousy treat me wrongly with abuse, slander, and scorn, may I take upon myself the defeat and offer to others the victory. Sixth verse, when someone whom I have helped or in whom I have placed great hopes mistreats me in extremely hurtful ways, may I regard him or her still as my precious teacher. 7th verse. In brief, may I offer benefit and joy to all my mothers, both directly and indirectly. May I quietly take upon myself all hurts and pains of my mothers. 8th verse. May all this remain undefiled by the stains of the 8 mundane concerns, and may I, recognizing all things as illusion, devoid of clinging, be released from bondage. So let's just start again with a quick review from last week. We started with the 8th verse, and I kind of said the numbers out loud because that might be helpful in the way, we're coming at these. So last week we started with the 8th verse and the 1st verse, and we focused on loving kindness. And so this eighth verse has these 8 mundane concerns. May all this remain undefiled, meaning may my intention, my motivation, and my dedication remain pure. We're not doing this practice for worldly gain. We're not doing it to make money. We're not doing it to puff up our ego, to show how virtuous and righteous we are. That would be completely in the opposite direction of why we're practicing. So he's reminding himself, may all this remain unstained by keeping a pure intention, motivation, and dedication, a pure heart. And these 8 mundane concerns, again, are what usually are driving our ego. So sometimes they are there and we don't notice them, but it's usually the sense of, I would like pleasure, I would not like pain. I would like gain, I would not like loss. I would like to hear praise, I would not like to hear blame. I would like to have a good name and have fame. I would not like to have disrepute and have a bad name. So I'm intentionally using that word I in there because it's usually what's driving these 8 worldly concerns is this sense of self-cherishing, really. And it's not a bad thing. It's not an unusual thing. It's not really that we're passing judgment in a sense of, oh, that's a bad way to think. It's more in the sense that it really doesn't bring us lasting happiness. Of course, having these concerns for the 4 pleasures or positive aspects, we're not saying it's not okay to want to feel happy or not okay to want to have good things happen. It's not about that. It's just saying that when we start to think with these 8 worldly concerns, they kind of build up and reify, they reestablish this false sense of an I, of an independent kind of me against the world. And they build up this sense of an ego, which is only and ever concerned about its own happiness and welfare and rarely thinks of others. That's why another title for these 8 verses of mind transformation, it's also found 8 verses to transform the mind. And the mind transformation is that we give up thinking of I in the sense of little, poor little me that's I've got to take care of. And we transform the mind to thinking about and cherishing others. We put their concerns first. How wonderful if all others had happiness in its causes, free from suffering in its causes, had only sorrowless bliss. And I'm thinking of all others equally with equanimity. There's not one I'm leaving out. It doesn't matter their nationality, their gender identity, their age, their physical capacity, their politics. It doesn't matter what they've done, who they've harmed. I'm still going to wish them all of these positive things. So this is why it's called also thought transformation, because often in society, the idea is around punishment, that if someone does something really, really bad, we think, oh, we can't wait till they get theirs. It's going to come back around. That's not what we're talking about is good and pure intention. that would be an example of a stain, of thinking that, someone should be really wickedly punished because they've done something really wickedly bad. Well, of course, that person needs to be re-educated, and there needs to be some kind of a retribution of acknowledgement and coming around to seeing a better way of living and doing things, not continuing to create harm. But the Buddha was saying that because everything and alive has Buddha nature, that instead of punishing and harming others, we should help them understand the true nature of the way things are, which is that selfishness and self-cherishing doesn't lead to lasting happiness. It might lead to temporary pleasure and temporary happiness, but what leads to real lasting happiness is the mind of bodhichitta, the mind that has an altruistic motivation and dedication to cherish others equal to or even more than oneself, that their happiness will eventually, and even just immediately when we wish for others' happiness, it does lead to our happiness because it's creating a beautiful mind. It's creating a peaceful mind. It's creating a powerful mind that we ourselves are the prime benefactors of. And then anyone who comes into our contact is also equally benefiting. So these 8 worldly concerns, he's saying, I've got to watch out for these because these are habits that I want to break. And I want to go right down the middle of those 8 worldly concerns. And how am I going to go right down the middle and not swing between pleasure and pain and loss and gain and fame and infamy and praise and blame? Well, I'm going to cultivate a mind that's keeping very clear intention, motivation, and dedication to watch myself, to watch the habits, which is why we say training the mind. We have to relearn a different way to see the world, in a different way to see the real nature of how things exist. We look like we're very independent because our body, we tend to say, oh yes, my body. And we can say, I'm sitting in this room, and in the middle of this room, if anyone walked in, they could see Dasel sitting here, and they wouldn't walk in and mistake Dasel's body for David's body or for Pranika's body or for someone else's. They would clearly say, oh, and they wouldn't say Dasel has many bodies. It's not like they're going to find a room full of physical Dasels. So there is someone named Dasel sitting here who is embodied, who has an appearance. But when we start to look more carefully at how this body exists, that's when we start to see it exists in very different ways than the way it appears. We can look at it biologically, as we talked about last week. We can look at it from quantum physics. We can look at it as even looking at all the cells under the microscope. There are trillions and trillions of cells constantly being born, existing, dying off. So we can look at it in terms of the organs, the skin, the heart, the brain, the livers, the kidneys. So where is Dasel and where is Dasel's body? We start to say, oh, I see, it's all those parts that make up the physical body. Okay, but is that Dasel? So then we say, no, there must be a mind, there must be a consciousness, because the body's not doing the talking. The mind, the consciousness is doing the talking. So can we see that? No, we can't see that because it doesn't have a physical form. The consciousness is non-physical, but it needs a physical body, a physical form to be able to express. So there's mind-body connection. And so what we're really training now is this mind. So the 8 verses of mind training. If we went to the gym, we use our mind when we do physical workouts, but generally if we go to the gym or we are doing something, going out for a run or going skiing, and we think more about, oh, now I'm going to exercise for the body. Of course, the mind is there, but our focus might be much more on our activity of the body. But of course, for monks and nuns and for lamas and spiritual practitioners, their main focus is training the mind. The body comes along and gets benefit, but it's the mind that is primary. So that is also a little bit unusual for the West, because if we talk about training, we often people, if you talk to a stranger went up to someone on the street, a stranger, and said, "Oh, I'm going to train," they would think you were going to the gym. But then you might say, "Oh no, I'm going to my Buddhist class now. I'm going to do my mind training." That might be something that kind of new for somebody to hear in the West. And it would be now in India as well, because not that many people are as interested in mind training as they are in the physical body training. All the Indians have taken up jogging, and now gyms are opening up. So the society's transforming here as well. So this is the next line. May I recognize all things as illusion. And we should better to say illusion like, because it's not that all things are just figments of our imagination. They do exist. It's more illusion because of how they exist, the way they exist. And then devoid of clinging, be released from bondage. So clinging here means not letting our minds get fooled, not clinging to appearances, starting to become more aware that the way things appear and the way they exist are two different things. So we worked last week with that 8th verse and the first verse, with a determination to achieve the highest aim for the benefit of all sentient beings, which surpasses even the wish-fulfilling gem. May I hold them dear at all times. And we talked about this first verse in connection to loving kindness and appreciating how much we really depend on other beings for the happiness in our life. And from our parents giving us this body and this birth, to the fact that everything we enjoy, there's not one thing in your room right now that you could look at that really someone else hasn't had a part in making happen. You could look at the Tonka behind you, somebody else painted that. You could look at the chair that you're sitting in, someone else made that. You could look at your smartphone, that we really don't even know how there's smartphones because they know how they work. We don't even know how they work. I don't know. My phone's making a sound. It knows why it's making a sound. I have no idea why it's beeping at me. I'm gonna at least do what I know how to do, which is put it on silent. So the smartphone, like who are all the beings making this? Like Steve Jobs. Now in India they're making their own version of the smartphones of the Apple. So all these beings are making smartphones. We don't know how and who is making that, but we're appreciative that we have them. So our clothing, everything, there's nothing we can look at. It's mind-blowing interconnection, as one of my friends up at Tushita Meditation Center here in India said. Mind-blowing interconnection. This whole world is created by others' kindness. So we have to really stop to consider that deep sense of interconnection means we're anything but independent. We're completely dependent on the happiness and the kindness of others to co-create a happy and healthy existence together. And so this is why we say the determination to achieve the highest aim for the benefit of all sentient beings, which surpasses even the wish-fulfilling gem. So last week we talked about, it could say who surpasses the highest aim to attain enlightenment surpasses the wish-fulfilling gem, because there would be nothing better than to have an enlightened consciousness, enlightened mind. You would never have suffering. You would only have happiness. You would be in nirvana. It would be a state of mind that would never reverse. So in other words, you'd never fall back into confusion. You would only be able to help others. You would never harm them. Therefore, everybody would feel good with you. They'd love you. They'd feel, wow, like anyone who's been around His Holiness the Dalai Lama or Ken Rinpoche, wonderful. I love to be with them. They only make me feel happy. They're always in a nice mood. Just to see their smile, just to hear their voice, how wonderful. And so these are beings who have been striving for enlightenment their entire lifetimes in this life, since His Holiness was the age of 2 being recognized, and Ken Rinpoche since the age of 7 starting to go to his village monastery and train. This is what happens when beings set their whole life purpose to training in enlightenment. Here at the nunnery, we have little nuns who are 5 and 6 and 7, and being around them. And I, said to Jetsuma the other day, like, imagine who they're going to be in 10 or 20 or 30 years. Like, you just can think. There are some nuns now who are in their 40s who have been here since they were teenagers, and they're extraordinary. They're amazing practitioners. And so they've been practicing with this determination, this dedication to achieve the highest aim, which is the highest aim. It's different than just being nice and being a good person. That's good to want to be a good person. It's good to want to be kind to others. But in this sense of the verses of mind training, to achieve the highest aim really means to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. So that's quite a noble endeavor. And so, for the benefit of all sentient beings, then the beings themselves are more precious than a wish-fulfilling gem, because the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas can't really help us attain enlightenment. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have already attained enlightenment. Who's going to help us attain enlightenment? It's our other beings that we're here on the planet with right now. It's those animals that we're going to be kind to and take care of, and see that their lives are precious to them, and we're going to not harm them. It's the difficult human beings who we don't agree with, maybe politically, but we're going to respect that as we believe in our opinions and our political views and our certitude about why we believe in what we believe in, so others also hold the same kind of belief and the same kind of conviction to their views, although those 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different views have nothing to do with each other. The dedication that beings feel to the way they believe and think is actually quite the same. So I might be the biggest anti-nuclear pacifist and want all nuclear weapons to be completely destroyed, and never to ever want to even fathom one having to be used, feeling that that's the best way forward for the planet, that would make the planet the most safe. And someone else might come up and say, oh no, that could never happen, because there would inevitably be someone who wouldn't give up all the nuclear weapons, and then they would use it eventually. And that person could be just as convinced of their, truth as I am of mine. And it doesn't make either of us wrong. It just means that we hold 2 different truths with probably pretty much similar conviction. So we have to be able to understand that sentient beings have different mindsets. They have different ways of seeing and being. But it's more important to try to understand why we think what we think than it is to have to be right about what we think. And sentient beings give us this opportunity, especially human beings, to have to cultivate humility, to understand we don't know exactly the whole picture, to have to practice patience and really deep commitment to wanting to understand others, especially those who think so differently than the way we do, to have to also understand why ethics are so important and non-harm, that not everyone's on the same wavelength and evolutionary course as everybody. We're at different points of understanding and being able to use our consciousness based on our karma, based on the way we've used our body, speech, and mind. We've created different causes and conditions for the way our mind sees reality. And Buddhism's never been one of the really, really overflowing major world religions. It's not among the greatest followers on the planet. I mean, most people are more following Christianity, and after that, Islam, than Buddhism. But Buddhism's been around for a long time, and it's stuck around because it does have a deep truth that it's able to share with those who are really interested in it. And, it's not as popular as even Judaism or the theistic traditions, because theism gives a much more easy understanding in some ways of the way things are. And people feel comfortable with culture that are tied to religions, and the Abrahamic cultures, the Judeo-Christian, Islamic cultures all really kind of share that, in the sense that where you find them being practiced, they're very tied into cultural identities. So in the West, in Europe, in America, Christianity; in the Middle East, in Israel, Judaism; and the other Middle Eastern states, Islam, they're all very, very much connected to culture. And so Buddhism is kind of interesting in that sense, in that you find many different kinds of Buddhisms in Asia. And it did disappear for a long time in India, but it's come back with the Tibetans, and it's quite popular now. And so even there's a cultural affinity. It's Tibetan Buddhism now shifting into Vajrayana Buddhism, because many people in the West and in other countries are showing interest in it, and you don't have to be a Tibetan to follow it. So Vajrayana Buddhism. But there's still some cultural overlay. So anyway, the sentient beings that we're practicing with are everybody, no matter what tradition they're following, different religions or no religions, atheism or theism. The benefit of having diversity is we don't always agree, and it's good that we don't, because that's how we learn how important ethics are, that we have an ethic of non-harming. We don't harm others just because they don't think the way we do. We don't say that no one has the right to believe what they want to believe, to follow their own tradition, because we ourselves enjoy the freedom to follow what we want to believe in. So we give that right to others. So ethics are so, so important. They're the foundation of our practice. And also, for the benefit, that means we're giving that sense of generosity. We're giving others the right and the freedoms to express their opinions, no matter how much we disagree with what those opinions are, as long as they're expressing them with non-harm. So freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. These are wonderful Western freedoms that were really codified in our founding of our country in the United States, and that India took for its own constitution, getting rid of casteism. So there are many things, in many ways, that this diversity brings us opportunity to practice in ways that are challenging, but that are really actually wonderful. So we want to think about the benefits of not only those who help us like our teachers, His Holiness the Dalai Lama or Ken Rinpoche, or other practitioners who believe similar things that we believe in, but we want to think of the benefits of those who think other than what we believe in, because they also help us. They help us develop qualities of humility, of compassion, of understanding, of effort, forbearance, non-judgment, non-harm, and morality. So these are really also more difficult, actually, to practice with people who don't believe the way we do, because it's easy to practice with people who believe the way we do. So that's why we want to appreciate all sentient beings. I just had a sentient being give me a little start. There's a little mongoose that lives up in the ceiling that just jumped on the roof. So, and it's a little bit late here now, so I'm appreciating that my little nocturnal housemate up in the roof is out and about. So I have to laugh about it, because one day it got inside, not luckily to my room, but to the room next door, and I had to go in and free that sentient being in the middle of the night. So we have to take humor on the path. If we take things too uptight, we're not going to be able to cultivate these qualities. So we have to use humor, and especially laughing at ourselves is the place to start. And our little mongoose friend. And so so this is why sentient beings surpass even a wish-fulfilling gem. They are more beneficial than a wish-fulfilling gem, because they are going to be the cause of us developing all of these qualities that help us attain enlightenment. So that's why we hold them dear at all times, not just sometimes, not just when I'm in the mood for it, not just when I've done my meditation and I'm feeling like, okay, I can go out and face the world. We've got to do it all the time because we never know, when that moment of enlightenment is going to come, that last ounce of patience where all of a sudden then some insight clicks in. And so at all times we need to do it. Even in our sleep, we have a prayer that we say, to even hold our pure morality in our sleep. So in our dreams, we have to watch our mind in our dreams. And yes, it's true, it does work. And so the Buddha was really the expert on mind training. No one had done it the way he had done it and gained these realizations in this path. He was the one who found the path. He was the one who said, yes, we can gain, all of us, these qualities because everyone has Buddha nature. And so we can walk the path because he gave us these teachings, which are the path. Actually, the Dharma is the path. So now the second verse, when I interact with someone, so this goes with, may I hold them dear at all times. So whenever we're interacting, we're holding whomever's in front of us, even my little mongoose friend, happily scurrying along up on the slate roof. May I hold them dear at all times. May I view myself as the lowest amongst all. Okay, this one I think Westerners have a hard time with. I'll speak from my own side, being a Westerner, that it's difficult. You might say, why? Why should I hold myself lowest amongst all? I asked Rinpoche, why? Why not, may I hold myself equal to others? That's probably the American, right? We say equality. But Rinpoche said it like this. He said, look, when you hold yourself with the most humility, and you always recognize how much others have so much talent and so much intelligence and kindness and so much, compassion, then you're only happy to be the lowest amongst them because you're holding them really dear in your heart. You're recognizing that they have so many qualities and your mind is appreciating those qualities in others instead of slipping into maybe getting puffed up into some pride, into some combative, argumentative state of mind, into some ego, subtle ways that we might not recognize, even just walking into a room, how we might impact others. But holding them as above us means we're already happy to greet them. We're already seeing that we're with these other wonderful beings who have so many talents. We're already happy just to be sitting at the table with them. We're happy to be quietly listening to them and just finding so much appreciation. And it also means we don't really get into too much trouble with other beings when we really cherish them and hold them higher than ourselves. And so holding ourselves lowest amongst all, Rinpoche said to me once, like, look, you just act like water, and water flows on the ground anywhere. It doesn't matter if people walk through it and step through it, or if cars drive over it, it's still going to go where it needs to get to. And everything's trampling on the water, but it's powerful. It still has got its own course that it's taking, but it doesn't care what's going on all around it. It's not disturbed by that. And so if we keep ourselves like water on the ground, flowing, not caring what else is coming above us or on top of us, it doesn't harm us. And so when we're with others and we start to accept this position of being lowest amongst everyone else, everyone starts to appreciate us because it means they get to feel that they're really seen, that they're really heard, they feel more empathized with. And, basically it makes people feel good. So it's done with a real sense, though, of genuine humility. And it's also done with this real sense of appreciation because we're also keeping in mind it is these others that are really going to help us attain enlightenment. And so we can feel ourselves lower because we're really appreciating them. Therefore, we're holding them higher. We're holding them as superior. And so It says this: from the very depths of my heart, respectfully hold others as superior. So it's really with a genuine sense of appreciation. I'm trying to give you the sense of why and how it is that we are appreciating them, and how it makes it very easy then to take the lowest position. It's because of everybody else, the opportunity they're giving us to attain enlightenment. It's only because others are there that we have the opportunity. If there were no others there, we couldn't practice generosity, we couldn't practice ethics, we couldn't practice patience, we couldn't practice joyful effort, we definitely couldn't practice concentration, and we definitely, without others around us, be able to learn to practice wisdom. If we didn't have teachers who had come from so far away from other sides of the world to come and bring the dharma, how would we ever really learn anything about the wisdom of the Buddha Dharma, about shunyata, about emptiness, about the true way things do exist, which is in deep, deep, deep interconnection, interdependence. And so that becomes very easy. And in this second and third verses that we're using today, we're thinking also now about the qualities of compassion. So, of course, as we don't want to have any suffering and want only to have happiness, all others are the same. And so when we meet others and they feel that compassion from us and they feel, oh, my darling, I never would want you to feel suffering. And that you really feel, and you remind yourself, in the exact same way that I myself don't want suffering, that other being across from me, whether it's a person, a cat, a mouse, a dog, a deer, a rabbit, a mongoose, they don't want the suffering either. That brings in this sense of respectfully holding all others in that same sense of cherishing and compassion. And so, with this sense of compassion of the Four Immeasurables, it's a heartfelt yearning that all be free of suffering and its causes. And it kind of begs the question, well, what can I do? How can I help them stay free of suffering and its causes? Automatically, this question arises, well, what can I do to give them compassion? Well, it's very compassionate to take a mind frame that says, I will hold them as superior. I will take the lowest position. And from my heart of hearts, when I interact, genuinely show more concern for anyone who's in front of me than showing concern for myself. And because of this, we see that grief and sorrow and depression will lessen. Those are actually our own near, they're called the near enemy. What often keeps us from feeling this way with others is that we feel sadness somehow, somewhere in our own heart that preoccupies our mind. We feel sadness about what's going on in the state of the world. And then we feel depression. We don't feel like we have the energy to generate a true mind frame that really has a genuine compassion. And so that's what somehow keeps us back from extending this attitude sometimes. What happens in the wider field of the society, that when we're feeling the opposite of this compassion, is we feel contempt and cruelty. We take pleasure in someone else's suffering. Like I said, it's that mindset that says, oh, I can't wait till they get theirs, and their bad karma, their karma is going to catch up with them. That's completely opposite of this beautiful attitude that we're going to train in, that isn't going to feel that way. And the signs of success, the way that we know if we're getting somewhere in our practice with this practice of compassion in the second verse, is our capacity for cruelty and delight in other people's misfortunes subsides. And instead, we start to feel more like this empathetic joy, like when they're happy, we're happy about it. And our thoughts of wishing harm for others and judging others, that those mind frames start to decrease. And this heartfelt yearning that all be free of suffering and its causes start to increase. And so this is really precious mind frame to cultivate, because it also brings compassion through our own experience. We can use our own suffering to understand, just as we don't want that, all beings don't want that. And so we can start to really genuinely start to hold others up and think like, well, what have I learned from the times I've suffered and from things that have caused me difficulty, and how can I really listen to others, really be there for them, and start to give them the genuine concern. And then this fourth verse, sorry, now the third verse, but which will be our fourth, because we took two last week. We took the eighth and the first one, and now we're taking the second and the third. In all my deeds, may I probe into my mind. This is a sense of mindfulness. May I really investigate. May I probe into my mind. Oh, yes. So in all my deeds. So that, again, in everything I'm doing. So deeds means our actions. May I probe into my mind. And as soon as mental and emotional afflictions arise, so now we have to stay diligent around really knowing what we're doing, when we're doing it, how we're doing it. Really listen to the words we're saying, the tone of voice we're speaking in. Also listen to when we speak. Maybe we shouldn't speak. Maybe it's a moment for silence. And then really being aware of what's going on in our mind. As soon as mental and emotional afflictions arise, first we pay attention to this mental and emotional affliction. What is going on? Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling fearful? Am I feeling judgmental? That's what affliction means, these poisons. So am I feeling selfish right now? As they endanger myself and others, so endanger means they harm me, they take away my peace of mind. They don't lead to lasting happiness and peace. They endanger my peace of mind, they endanger others' peace of mind. May I strongly confront them and avert them. So this means like really now my practice, I'm showing up and I'm strongly going to stop them. I'm going to recognize what's going on and say, no, I'm not going to go into that way of thinking. No, I'm not going to go into that way of speaking. Sometimes I have to tell the little nuns, zip the lip. They like it, the little rhyme, but it's a good little mantra. You know, if we really have a habit of sometimes speaking quickly to others and kind of telling them the way it is from our side, we can just say, no, zip the lip, maintain the noble silence, and then we avert them, we avoid them. So in all my deeds, may I probe into my mind. So this is the mindfulness training. This means when we're washing the dishes, just wash the dishes, not resenting that someone else left the dirty dish in the sink. Just wash the dish. It's okay. You're doing them a kindness. As soon as mental and emotional afflictions arise, oh, you see some news that's not good news on the television. And then judgment around blame and anger maybe comes up, then you notice, oh, these are not helpful emotional and mental states of mind. Let me take a breath. Let me not judge or take delight in other people's misfortunes. Let me stay alert here, vigilant, and release those afflictions because they're harmful to oneself and to others. I'm going to strongly confront them and avert them. How do we confront them? Well, we have the courage to be honest with ourselves. We don't pretend that we're always in this very peaceful Zen, bodhichitta frame of mind all the time, if that's not the case. So we have the courage to be honest about what's going on, not judgmental, not self-flagellating, and not self-critical, but just courageous to say, whoa, there's that habit. Okay, I got it. I see it. I know what's going on now. Curiosity might be there. Why is it going on? But don't spend too much time with that. Don't, in the West with psychotherapy, people try to get to the root of the problem in the childhood and let that go. It's for whatever reason, it's your habit. It's been developed and it's happening now. That's all you need to know. You don't need to get back to the regression, digression to what your mother did or your father did. That's done and gone. The habit is yours now. Just let's work with what we know. So you've got the habit, it's showing itself. And now you have the courage because you mindfully are noticing it, you're taking responsibility, and you have the courage to confront it. That means you're acknowledging, you're brave to just say, look, that's my thing. I got to do something about it because here it is again. Great. It's an opportunity. So instead of, trying to hide it or deny it, we're just showing up. And that's wonderful. That's part of what liberation means. There's freedom in that. We're just showing up to be with what's going on. We're not labeling it good or bad, right or wrong. We're just noticing it. But we're noticing maybe in this case that because it's a mental or emotional affliction, meaning something that doesn't bring happiness, an affliction brings us discomfort, this unease. We're saying, well, actually, I'm going to label it as something I want to change because it doesn't help my peace of mind. So all we're going to do is then say, how can I change it? Well, I'm going to avoid this habit now. I'm going to use compassion. I've confronted it. I've taken a breath, and I'm going to let it go. So that's all we have to do is when mental and emotional difficulties arise, we just have to notice them and don't feed them. Don't give in to them. Don't follow the habit. Stop it. How do you stop it? I know it sounds too easy to be true, just through awareness. Because as soon as you become aware of something that's not beneficial and helpful to your state of mind, you'll think about not wanting to do that. It's when we don't pay attention that we continue to perpetrate bad habits. So that awareness with compassion, with loving kindness, then stops you from continuing a habit that doesn't benefit yourself, that doesn't benefit others. These would be habits born out of ignorance, born out of selfish kind of desire, born out of hatred, anger, that are just there, that just, can be changed. If we couldn't change it, then there would be no point to doing mind training and thought transformation. But we can change, and many, many have. And so with empathetic joy, we can start to look forward to, okay, when things are coming up, now it's an opportunity. We don't have to feel like, oh, not that again. We can feel like, no, it's great. Now I can see it. Now I can do something with it. I can work with this. So we bring compassion because we recognize that we want to be free of suffering, that others also want to be free of suffering. Others are more helpless often than we are to be free of suffering because many people don't have any kind of mind training to practice. But we rejoice that we do. And we're actually in a position to do something about it. We're poised to be able to take some kind of a positive action, which is to avoid getting into these afflictions, to avoid getting into self-centered attachment, to avoid getting into grief and sorrow and depression, to avoid ill will and the intention to harm, to avoid taking joy in another's misfortune, to avoid contempt and cruelty, to avoid taking pleasure in someone else's suffering. Not everyone is in a position to avoid all these things. That's why it's so precious. Many, 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 many beings are not able to avoid these things, which is why we need also these immeasurable qualities of loving kindness and compassion, to recognize they might not be, but we are, because we have a training. And by practicing this training, our own signs of success will flourish, we'll feel less ill will, will increase in friendliness and warm-heartedness, will have more equanimity, more wisdom. Our capacity for cruelty and delight in other people's misfortunes and difficulties will completely disappear, and instead we'll wish them only deep compassion. And just by continually wishing compassion for all that lives, this kind of empathetic joy will arise. And that is a protection. That's a remedy. That's a guard to keep our own peace of mind flourishing. That's a guard and a remedy to keep us on the path heading towards what's called not abiding nirvana. So, a state of mind that's free of all these negative qualities, these poisons, and that has cultivated only all the positive, helpful ones. So, this is why we're training, and these are the ways that we follow the trainings. And we need to do it all the time so that we don't undermine our own mental composure. So it's not like we say, oh, um, today when I get to work or when I go to the doctors, I'm going to really just practice this one verse of the mind training. What we want to do is try to keep these mind training verses all the time with us, and these four immeasurable qualities all the time with us, growing and growing and growing like a waxing moon. And so we're taking them, 2 by 2 now. So last week we started with 8th and 1. This week we're looking at 2 and 3. So we're breaking it down little by little when we first start to train, but eventually we're going to put them all together. So that when you have all these verses together and all these qualities together, you'll always have the mind completely protected and under your own control, under your own benefit, happiness, altruistic intention. Peace of mind is always there. And these qualities will come without you even having to think about them. So there is a sense of, at the beginning, we have to train, as we do for many, many things that we've had to learn. But once we get our mind going in that good direction, the mind by itself wants to go because it will be convinced of its own experiences. The experiences that will arise will in effect be the proof of the pudding, so you will find from your own experiences, not just from reading these words or from listening to what I'm saying about them, or to listening to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or to Jetsuma's teachings on them. The most beautiful and wonderful thing about the mind training is that you'll find it out from your own experience. And that this is what the Buddha said: don't believe anything anyone has said, even if I myself have said it, unless it accords to your own knowing. And that's what's so beautiful about Buddhism, is following the teachings leads you to your own deep knowing. So this is the essence of how to generate bodhicitta, how to exchange the self for others, and why we want to exchange the self for others, and how to exchange the self for others. By cultivating this great compassion for all mother beings, our connection to them becomes much more empathetic. Our compassion becomes much more heartfelt, and our loving kindness, just the wish for our own happiness and others, just continues to bubble over. It doesn't mean you have to, feign a smile or walk around all the time trying to get happy. There will just be a kind of contentment that continually creates itself and is known in the mind. And even when things are difficult and challenging, the mind will start to respond in very different ways than it did before, when the habits of mind were not challenged and when there was no kind of antidote that we knew what to call up. So these are ways that we're able to use our day-to-day life with deep appreciation, and especially when things are hard. It's the best time to train, because we see that the benefits are needed and they come more quickly than if things are kind of going along nicely and we don't have too many concerns and we take a lot for granted. Like a few years ago, we would have said, like, oh yeah, see you next year and can't wait to come back. But we don't know. Like, someone, after I was in Colorado in 2019, I was at this nice center, Shivananda Center in the Bahamas, and they wanted me to schedule for the following visit to come back in 2020. And I remember talking to the sister there, and she said, "Oh, Dasel, will you come again next year at this time?" And I said, "Oh, well, who knows?" I said, "Let's wait and see." And she remembered we talked by Zoom a few months ago, and she said, "That was so funny that you said that." She said, I thought very clearly back to that moment when we wanted to book you, and you said, well, let's just see how things are going to go." She said, "Did you know something?" I said, "No, I just know that my teacher always taught me, like, we don't even know what's happening in the next hour, let alone in the next year. So we can just take things very slowly and just go day by day. That will be enough kind of future management." And I like it. I really did appreciate that. Rinpoche always demonstrated that, and it's helped a lot in especially life now during the COVID, but just in life in India in general is very different than in the States, that planning um, and especially in a Tibetan Buddhist nunnery or monastery, it just doesn't work that way. It's just very immediate, like what's happening right now, to the point where, the gong might be ringing, and not now because it's almost 11:30 at night, but the gong could be ringing at any time of day, like kind of calling the nuns to the temple, saying like, "Oh, come on, now we have another puja to do, we have another sadhana." And everyone just kind of leaves what they're doing and goes and does that. So it's a very different kind of fluid way of being without a lot of pre-planning, which, coming from the West is quite different, because we like to plan, we like to make plans for the future, and future orientation is much more of a Western concept than an Eastern one. So learning to just live in the here and now with what's going on is another kind of mind training, and there's a piece in that. And it doesn't mean you can't have some idea of what you'd like to have happen in the next weeks or month or year. It doesn't mean you can't make any plans. It just means not to bank on them, not to count on them so strongly, and to be able to have the humility and the courage to face with whatever's going on, not always being in our control. These days, the mind training around that courage is accepting that we're not always in control. And so anxiety is directly tied into this, which means, because we come to recognize that we're not always in control, there can be a lot of feelings of anxiety, of panic, of having to accept that recognition. But the Buddha said, that doesn't have to be something scary. It just means be in control of what you can be in control of, which is your own mind. You can't control others. You can't control the environment. You can't control the weather. You can't control the economics, the economy, but you can control how you respond to all of this lack of uncertainty. You can control your own mind and how you show up with courage and conviction in the capacity that you have of your own mind to meet challenges. You can remember that you've met them before in the past, and that you're still here now, and you still have qualities to develop even more strongly, so that you can feel actually like you're not actually afraid of challenges. You're looking forward to them. You're looking forward to seeing, what else might you learn while you still have this precious human life. And you might even surprise yourself along the way. So this is how we can confront the uncertainty and the sometimes anxious feelings we might have around uncertainty, with kind of just being able to show up and say, okay, this is what uncertainty is like. This is what the unknown is. But, we've been living in it our whole lives. It's just we haven't been paying attention to it, really. I mean, we like to feel like we are in control of everything that's going on, but there's been not that much we really have been in control of, but we've been doing the best we can with what we know. Now we can know better, so that our inner qualities become much more calm, much more clear, much more loving and kind. All these positive traits of mind get developed immeasurably, and our life experience becomes even more wonderful, because now we don't have that much fear about what's going to happen, all the what ifs. We just say, well, we'll meet it as it comes. We'll show up to it with all of our best capacities, with our calm, clear mind, with our wisdom and compassion. And, whatever comes, we'll be able to deal with it. And that means we can sleep more peacefully. We can let go of these mental and emotional afflictive states that don't bring happiness. So these kinds of states of mind that have maybe been habitualized, that we can start to look at and start to say, no, actually, those aren't benefiting myself. They're not benefiting others. So I'm going to transform them. And we're going to do that with the power of thought transformation, meaning that all other beings are the same as we are in not wanting to have these, but that we have the power within our own mind to do something about them. And so that we then develop more compassion, more awareness, more empathy for beings who might really push our buttons, but who have no tools in their toolbox to do anything about why their minds are so wild and out of control, why their speech is so much full of lying and falsehoods. Of course, it doesn't mean we have to respect them, but we can have compassion, because beings who live creating that kind of karma are not happy. Beings who are under the delusions of bad habits created over many, many, many lifetimes, they still have Buddha nature. They still have capacity to develop that Buddha nature. And the Buddha said they will, all the way up to enlightenment. Maybe not in this lifetime. We don't know how long it will take us, but we do know that we don't have to judge the others. We can also even use them as examples of what we don't want to do, because we can see it doesn't bring happy results. So with the second and third verse, last week I asked you to practice with the eighth and the first verse with your loving kindness. So I'm going to leave a little time to hear someone brave, a few brave people share any experiences you had with your loving kindness. And with the second and third verses now this week, we want to really think about practicing with compassion. So first, I would like you to really review these second and third verses as part of your daily practice this week. And I'd like you to really try to let yourself be honest with maybe one or two mental or emotional afflictions, these difficult mind states that arise. They might be fear, they might be jealousy, it might be anger, it might be doubt. Whatever it is for you, you know what it is. It doesn't matter if I've said it or not. But to use this third verse, that you really do probe into your mind, you really do call up mindfulness, and you stay vigilant to catch your habit. Maybe it's depression, maybe it's loneliness. That you see, these are all habits that are born out of thinking about the I, the self-cherishing. And so when this mind state of mind comes up, you catch it and you say, aha, this is endangering my happiness and endangering others. So now I'm going to strongly confront it and avert it. I'm going to have courage, and I'm going to remember with conviction how I can avoid them. I'm going to apply compassion. So first, to your own experience, of course, you give compassion. And you say, oh, well, I'm doing the best I can. And actually, I'm doing very well, because now I know I can just have compassion, because I'm not the only one with this habit. I'm not the only one with these feelings. I'm not the only one in this moment sitting in this state of mind, but I'm having compassion, and I'm sending that compassion out to all others who, just like me, just in this moment, are feeling this exact same thing. Because as human beings, it feels as if our feelings are completely unique and our own, but they're not. Our feelings can be felt by all other human beings, for sure, that are alive, but even many animals have feelings of sadness. They have feelings of loneliness. They have feelings of anger or fear. So, feelings are very much universal to things that are alive. We don't know how all other creatures experience their feelings, but we do know that there are universally felt experiences. So have compassion first for yourself, then extend it out to all others. And that's how you protect them. You protect them from that habit that doesn't bring you happiness, then you're not bringing unhappiness to others. And you protect them by offering them genuinely heartfelt compassion, which means you have empathy, you understand, and you're developing that capacity to understand others. So let's move now a bit into a little bit of dialogue. I'd like to hear from anyone who would like to share their practice of the mind training from this past week. If you have a little anecdote or a little experience that you'd like to share. I feel like I'm the teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Bueller. Some of you can relate to that. No one's got anything to share.
Okay, if nobody wants to talk, I can share something.
Yes, please.
I didn't want to talk because I spoke last time. So I have this neighbor who's causing me enormous amounts of suffering since last June. So I thought maybe, and two or three people brought up, it might be a good idea to send her a book. And I wasn't sure about this, but she had mentioned that she was interested in meditation and joining a group. When I asked her to please lower the volume on her stereo, that I was in a Zoom and meditating, she said, "Oh, I'd like to do that. Can I join your group?" So with the recommendation of others, I ordered a book on Amazon and sent it to her on beginner meditation, and she didn't respond well to it. But I made the effort. So that's my little story.
Well, thank you for sharing your little story. And thank you for practicing your loving kindness. I mean, the main thing that we really, really have to keep aware of in our practice is that we can only change one person in the whole wide world. Which one?
Yeah.
We can only change this
Ourself.
one,
Yeah.
only ourselves. But if someone is expressing interest, or if you're finding a way to try to reach out and give support, it doesn't mean we can't offer, as you did, to practice loving kindness and to, give something that might have been received. And who knows, it still may be received in the right moment. Karma is interesting. We don't know how it ripens. And in the meantime, it doesn't harm. It didn't do her any harm. And it did do you good, because you not only had to practice patience. I mean, maybe she did or didn't turn down the volume on the stereo. You practiced generosity, and you practiced ethics. You didn't yell at her. You didn't tell her she was stupid. You sent her a book. You were kind. So, you see how she offered you these opportunities to practice and develop these qualities that in the long run, these will serve you regardless of what she does, or irregardless of what she does or doesn't do. I mean, it doesn't help you in the meantime with the noise, but you could, for your side, for your peace of mind, you could get headphones and plug into the Zoom meeting, and you might hear better instead of hearing her thumpa, thumpa, thumpa. Instead of, if she's not open to being a nice neighbor and turning volume down, you can think of some things that you can do from your side that might help your situation, like noise canceling headphones or whatever like that.
Thank you.
Yes. I mean, so it's win-win, and you can hold, and you should hold your own right to have peace of mind for yourself equal to hers. But I think it was great that you just, you know, tried to approach her and ask for what you needed. She expressed something, you sent her something. Maybe she can't accept it right now, but who knows? She might pick it up at some point when you're not aware.
And she gave
And
it back.
what's that?
She gave it back to me and she told me what she thought of it.
Okay, well, you can gift it to someone else. Now you can give it even again, and you still get to be even
Right,
more.
right. Yeah. I can't decide whether I ought to read it. I mean, never read it, I could, but I know the author and he's so good. And
Well,
or
you
I
can read it again, then you can still give it away. See, it just keeps getting better and better.
and you reminded me, I do have a headset and I usually have it next to me when I'm in a Zoom meeting now, so that I can put it
Yeah.
on and put it in. And but I forgot it. It's not here, but fortunately, it's been quiet right now. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Good. Yeah, my pleasure. And just remind yourself, okay, she's loud and noisy sometimes, but not all the time, so that you don't have the habit of like, she's really a bad person. It's a habit. It's something she's doing. It's not the person doing it. It's just their activity, and they're not like that all the time. And so we have to remind ourselves, don't let your mind label that person now as a bad neighbor. You know, maybe she might smell smoke and she might come in and drag you out one day. You don't know. So she has this noise habit, and that's not a good habit, but that doesn't make her the bad person.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Anybody else? Nobody else? Practicing, sharing?
Last week, you mentioned checking in once an hour to see what our state of mind was.
Yeah.
And I did really good the first day. And, as the days progressed, it lessened. And when I was at work, though, it was really helpful. There were some situations where I'd start thinking about the past or the future. And then I, would have to check myself and realize I'm here right now. I have to deal with this right now. And so that was kind of my experience over the week. It just made me become more aware of my thoughts and just how they just kind of run off. And, I'm like on a wild horse, just bouncing along. And I have to just kind of stop and say, okay, I'm here right now. What can I do to be of benefit right now? And how are these thoughts serving me right now? So that was great. Thank you.
Oh, that's excellent. Lexo, we say. Excellent, excellent. Wonderful practice. And yes, of course, because the first day you're really thinking about it, but recommit yourself again tomorrow, start again every hour, once an hour, I'm going to try. And even if you notice that that has fallen away, you can just start from that moment on. Now I'm going to try again every hour on the hour. You don't have to feel like, oh, it slid down and you didn't come back to it. So that's great. And the awareness is the point. The thoughts really aren't the problem. It's just to become aware and then not follow the thoughts, not believe in everything we think, just to be aware. And then exactly as you did, just what are you doing in the moment? What needs to have the full awareness right now? Like that. So wonderful.
Thank you.
Really, really good practice. And that still is the recommendation for everybody, is once an hour to try to check the state of your mind. And if you feel you couldn't start off with once an hour, try at least 3 times a day. 3 times a day. But I always think that once an hour is good, because you might end up with at least 3 times a day. Anybody else want to pop in any kind of experience that they had from last week?
I would be glad to. Over the past year, I think one of the most obvious things that I noticed was that even as I was doing my prayers, which I do many times during the day, it felt it felt as if I wasn't connecting at all. Like I'd lost through the past 4 years, everything that we've been through, listening to all the negativity and harm, that everything just lost its juice, its value, and it's almost like the arrow could never hit the target.
Mm.
And that's how it was feeling. And one of the things that I noticed as part of my practice is reminding myself that yes, there are people who have good intentions. Don't forget that, and that's really been very key. And even just to listen every once in a while, because I don't tend to tune into the media at all. I don't find value in it, but to those people who are sincere about helping others, it created just this click, this I don't know how to describe it well, but it was like falling back into the into myself and my right way of thinking, and the beauty of my practice. And even I have an altar inside, but I also have one outside, which I always stop at when I'm walking the puppy. And she's even learned to just stop and be calm when I'm doing my prayers. It's quite remarkable, actually, but which never happens any other time. But she's kind of learned to just be patient, which is astonishing to me. But no matter where I am now, and just in hourly practice, and sometimes more, because there are a lot of people whom I have in my circle who are suffering quite badly right now with many different things. And it's this, it's almost like a reawakening of just the essence of it, and being here with everyone, and of course with you. It's just been quite wonderful, and I wanted to express my gratitude.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. But what you're talking about is quite normal in our practice. We might hit spells where things just, one of my Buddhist sisters, Joan Halifax, was some of you might know of her. She's a Zen priest, and she wrote a book called The Dark Night of the Soul. And these things happen in our practice, and especially now with what the US is going through in many, many different ways of the media and the divisiveness, and also the world, like the climate change that the world's going through. There are many, many stressors now. So to be honest with yourself that way and notice that was going on, and then to be able to recalibrate is just wonderful. It means you really do have a great foundation of your practice. The things that you've been doing and praying and putting out really are there for you. And when they're not, it's sometimes a good noticing, because it means your mind is really aware when authenticity is there or not. And then when it's not, we can recalibrate. We can go in another direction, as you did, and reclaim it. So that's beautiful. So just keep going like that. And with your puppy, I mean, you could teach your puppy some mantra that when they hear that, they'll stop their crazy behavior. And the one for your friends, the mantra I have in mind also for your circle of people who are going through hardship, Om Mani Padme Hum. Use Om Mani Padme Hum. Animals really respond, and children really respond to it. And that is the mantra of compassion. Om Mani Padme Hum. I think most of you have heard it before. But you can say it to your puppy when you want it to settle down. Just say very strictly, Om Mani Padme Hum. Then it might start knowing, oh, that's a command.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. That was really helpful. Is there someone else? I think there's a message here. I don't know what it says. Oh, okay. So direct message. I won't read it out loud. Anyone else want to share anything?
I'll share a real quick one that's an anecdote. You never know when you're going to get a lesson or have one repeated to you. Last night, Luann and I watched a movie called A Dog's Purpose. I think it was on Amazon. And it was, the whole movie was from the viewpoint of a dog as he went from lifetime to lifetime. And some of the lifetimes were good, some lifetimes were not so good. There were good things and bad things within each lifetime. And at the end of the movie, the dog says, well, the one thing that I have learned is to be here now. I thought, cool. So just wanted to share that.
Oh, that's good. It's called A Dog's Purpose. Is that what you said was the title of it?
Yes.
Oh, that sounds like a good one. Maybe I'll show that to the nuns. We're always looking for some good ones that the little nuns can see, and they'll love that about a reincarnating dog. They'll be able to relate to that entirely. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that really is the heart of the practice, because that's where life is happening. You know, it's just right now. And if we can become more aware by being courageous to our true experience, as Caleb was saying, she had the courage to show up to her truth, thinking like, you know, this practice, I've been doing it for a long time and I've believed in it, but it's just the juice isn't there. And then being able, instead of undermining her mental composure, she was able to regain it by, you know, having the conviction that she could take it in another direction and still come out in a way that's even more rejuvenated. And so we have to keep things kind of soft and flexible. And that's why we need the compassion and we need the courage and honesty to let our own truth unfold. And the Buddha Dharma is beautiful that way, because there's no one way, there are many ways. And so what we're doing now is talking about mind training with these 8 verses of thought transformation, thinking of self and others. How precious are others? How can we work with the difficult scenarios? These beautiful 4 immeasurable qualities that we can never run out. This every day of this life, every moment of this life, we could never develop them endlessly. So that means we can always be carrying them and practicing them, both for ourselves and for all other beings. How wonderful that is. In our sleep, you know, we get to a state where we can remember dreams, to become more conscious in dreams, to be able to act very clearly in dreams, to remember what was that dream, what was that dream telling me. I don't know. My father's been passed away for a long time, since 2003, and I don't dream about him very often, but last night I dreamt of him and it was wonderful, like just to see him again very quickly. The connection wasn't going to be that long. It was a quick hug and kiss, and then he just said, keep moving forward. And I thought, that's great. You know, that's a great message. That's why we do our practice. We keep doing it to move forward on the path, get closer to enlightenment. Don't look back. You can have gratitude for the life you've had, but don't hang on. The things that have passed will never be seen again. We only are in this moment now. If we live well now, the future will take care of itself. So this is why I think these 8 verses of mind training, or 8 verses of thought transformation, are so precious, because they'll never not work. They'll always work and always have relevance. The 4 immeasurables will always be applicable. They'll always be relevant. And the only thing we definitely, and the only one we definitely will always have with us, is ourself. You can travel to foreign places, you can travel to the grocery store, you can go upstairs to your room. It's just you yourself that are doing this. And so your mind, the quality of mind, the state of mind, that's what I mean by your deeper self, your consciousness. That's the thing that we totally can take responsibility for, and we should take responsibility for. We shouldn't worry too much that others are not able to do it, or how they're doing it, or what's going on for them. We should always wish them the four immeasurables, and then really just attend to ourselves, happily taking the lowest position. I don't know, you agree or not, but I want you to practice it. I'm practicing it. I have to say, I have a huge love, because now I'm kind of here in India. This will probably be for the second straight year. And, you know, Americans aren't that popular these days. So there are a lot of anti-American little bit of jokes, even here sometimes at the nunnery. I'm the only American, so they're said to my face. But anyway, I'm still happy to be a world citizen, but I'm born in the USA, and I have hopes, and definitely I have not lost any kind of ideas that this difficulty in time that we're in now can still lead to much, much greater unity going forward in this 21st century. I'm sure that it will illustrate for the world, especially now with COVID, how essential it is to work together and come closer together. And for the politic and the economics, yes, also likewise, that no one wants to have the suffering, and that everyone is glad to have better cooperation and diplomacy. So, you know, it's never been absolutely perfect, but humanity's still here. And I think we're going to still be around for quite a long time. So may we all attain Buddhahood for the benefit of every sentient being. So if anyone has anything to share, otherwise we'll say our dedication. Anyone have any last minute? Thank you to those who have their voice, and, you know, no problem if you didn't, but next week I'll ask again if anyone would like to let us know how the practice with the second and third verses goes, with really focusing on compassion. Through this virtue, may I swiftly, having gained Guru Buddha state, place each and every sentient being, without exception, in that state. Precious supreme Bodhi mind, may it where unborn arise, and where born never decline, but increase forevermore. Thank you again to David Gardner, my dear Dharma brother, and to everybody here at Bodhi Mind Center for this session. May we all attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings, and may all be happy and well. Have a great week. Take
Thank
good
you.
care, and may your practice flourish.
Thank you, Venerable Dasel. We really appreciate you so much.
Very
Thank you.
mutually. Very mutually. Okay.